Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the LFC Transfer Room. My name is Lewis, and today I am joined by Race and Carter. We've got quite a few things to go through. It's been fairly busy, actually. Thought it was going to be a little bit quieter, but no, it's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of news, a lot of rumours. Just before we get into that, please, everyone, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more content. Tune in every single day, 7:30 p.m. UK time for the daily streams. At the moment, everything seems to be very Liverpool focused in the media, where he seems to be in a spotlight at the moment. Everything that going on, good, bad, everything in between is just highlighted to the max lately. So we've got plenty to talk about. Start off with you, Race. How are you? Doing good?
Yeah, I'm just still trying to get over that loss on Sunday. It stung a little bit, although we are still top for the moment. But yeah, just trying to wash away that. I wish we had a game midweek to kind of get over that, but nonetheless, we wait until Saturday.
Just like a palate cleanser, just to sort of alleviate the stress of it. And Carter, all good?
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, just not the best of games on the weekend, but you're not going to win every game. Sometimes it's going to be like this. We just got to get on with it and just smash Burnley, hopefully, on the weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose we can touch a little bit on Burnley, actually. That's a good sort of segue. I mean, how are we feeling about that? Because I know Burnley have been really, really poor, but it's still a difficult game to play, I suppose. I mean, Race, just your quick thoughts on Burnley before we go into the topics.
Yeah, I mean, it always seems like Burnley just has something about them, although they're not at least when Sean Dyche was under them, they're more defensive and, sitting back, and I'm sure they still are. But yeah, they haven't been good. It is a home game, so that gives me a little more confidence that, that we won't have as much of a struggle. And we have a week off, from a game is, we've had a couple, like the last 2 weeks, we've had a game midweek, so it's been a little tight. Now we get a little bit of rest. Of course, we've seen Salah back and in training and whatnot. So, we're hoping to get him back, and maybe Endo will be there too. But yeah, it'll just be good to get back on the field again. Just to kind of kick on and have a good result there. Because it was only a few days ago we were feeling pretty good after thrashing Chelsea. And then that's just how the game is. You take a loss, especially. It was only our second loss of the season, so it kind of brings out some reactions, but I think once we get back on the pitch on this weekend, we'll feel good about ourselves, and certainly we'll get a win. I would think so.
Yeah, maybe it was a sort of not a humbling we needed, but I think it might have been a little bit of a sort of reality check, as if to say, yeah, you're doing good at the moment, but these results can still happen. And despite what we think, Arsenal are still very much in the title race. So maybe we needed it. Maybe we did just need that sort of bring us back down to earth, reset, go again. And we've got a good run of games coming up. So it might. I'm not too upset losing to Arsenal at the Emirates. I'm more upset in how we lost. That was the big thing, I suppose. Carter, your thoughts on just quick on that Arsenal match then, just in general, and then the Burnley game coming up. How you feeling playing them?
I thought honestly the Arsenal game was just a gut punch, because we got our sort of lucky. We got the own goal, and you think we're back in this. Núñez has come on. You're thinking just stay in this. Just don't do anything silly, and we'll get one chance, a half chance, and hopefully we take it. And then the two most reliable players, the two guys you put your house on not to absolutely mess it up, do it. And sometimes that happens. That's football. Sometimes Messi misses penalties. Sometimes people miss own goals. Like it's just going to happen. Like I'm almost more glad that it's happened to them opposed to someone like Gravenberch or Conor Bradley or someone like that, because I think everyone can mistakes are going to happen in seasons. And I think it's good that it's kind of happened to two players who've got enough credit in the bank to take it.
Yeah.
And then absolutely. For Burnley, if you'd have said at the start of the season, I'm excited to see Endo come back, I would have probably laughed, but I'm really excited to see him come back. I think he'll do well. Also, I think a lot of people would have been surprised that him and Thiago maybe would play some minutes together at some point, and they both hopefully I could see maybe Thiago getting 30 minutes maybe, because we should be 2 or 3 up. You should be able to give him some minutes to get up some match fitness, and Endo as well. And I'd maybe like to see Harvey play, because I don't think they're not a very large team in terms of size like Sander Berger is, but they haven't got too much size. Like Elliot's not going to be bullied. Like I think it will be an interesting game. I think some players will get minutes, and it will just hopefully, just as you said, a palate cleanser, and we move on to the game after.
Yeah, you make a good point there. It's not the physical Burnley team that we used to see under Sean Dyche. It's very much the transitioning into a technical phase, almost like Arsenal did towards the end of Wenger's period. You know, they went from the physical powerhouses of like Vieira, Tony Adams, players like that, to the more technical Santi Cazorlas, Francis Coquelin, things like that. So, yeah, it's a good point, to be fair. And that Arsenal game, we just didn't look good. I think that's the thing that's upset me the most. I've been a very much, if we're going to lose, I'd rather go down. I'd rather lose trying, and it didn't seem to happen. But if we can survive the news of Klopp leaving, we can survive anything. It's not the end of the world. The season's still going. Now, we'll go to some more positive news. Take away everything that's gone on this weekend, and we go back to the transfer news. That's what we're big for. It's the transfer room, so we've got to talk about that. And one player who's been continuously linked, always seems to be linked to the club, is Johan Bakayoko. He's the PSV right winger, 20 years old. According to the sporting director of the club, PSV, he will be leaving this summer. There's no doubt about it. He's up on the market. Teams are interested in him. The reported price is around 35 million. I don't buy that for a second personally. I'll get your guys' thoughts on it in a second. But apparently there's concrete interest from us, and there has been for a good few months. He's a right winger, left-footed, and he's scored multiple goals. I'll get stats up in a moment, but he's also contributing in the Champions League for the club. So he's got pedigree and clearly looks like a very talented player. Race, your thoughts on the transfer in general, and just, what are your thoughts on this as a whole?
Well, I think it would only be a purchase or a move we would make if Salah would be out the door, because he is a right winger. He's kind of a like for like, obviously not a replacement for Salah, but in terms of positionally, he is that in that spot, right winger, left footed. So that's the only way I would see this move happening. Of course, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Salah leaves, given the Saudi interest and the lump of money you would get from that. It'd be hard to turn down. So there certainly is an avenue that this would happen. As for Bakayoko, I'm a fan of him. He just looks the part. Just watch some clips too. Seems comfortable on his right foot as well. Which I don't. I don't like the players to be so dominant foot. Only can play on one foot. They can
like
play
Daniel Sturridge kind of. You can only do the left, and that's it.
Or even kind of like Harvey Elliott. Elliott I think is kind of like this, really left-footed. Struggles a lot with his right, not as confident with it. Bakayoko seems a little more confident. And as a winger, it's kind of you got to be able to do that, because you can't just be a one-trick pony and just always cut in or do the same move. You gotta mix it up, and he seems to have that. He looks like he's definitely has some potential to his game. The only thing is just coming over from the Dutch league. You just wonder how that translates to the Premier League. Of course, we can just look at Gakpo coming from the same spot. I think he's performed well, and I don't think there would be any issue coming over. Of course, the thing we have to think about with transfers now is, it's not going to be Klopp that's going to bring them in and develop them and manage them, So that's where, Klopp leaving for me has me the most concerned, because, I'm not as sure of whoever's going to be our manager is going to get the most out of them, because I just don't know. I haven't seen it personally. I always say I give Klopp the benefit of the doubt of bringing a player in, because I know he'll get the best out of him, because by and large, he has always done that, bar for maybe a couple players, and it's down to injury. He every time he gets a player in, he gets them right usually, and it's a good move. So the only thing that's kind of what I'm holding up on is just who's going to be his coach, who's going to help him out, and if that spot is going to be available if Salah leaves the other way. Because again, I don't see a situation where you have both Salah and Bakayoko, because you don't really want to unless the new manager, doesn't have those cutting wingers type, but I think that's obviously what we've had success in. I think I would love to continue to do that, so that would certainly be, there'd have to be a solid departure in order for Bakayoko to come in.
I mean, I'll keep it with you then, Race, for a second, because you make a good point there of, is he going to, the only way you could come into the team is if Salah was to leave, but in the same breath, we've got two experienced players fighting through the middle in Nunez and Gakpo. We've got Jota and Diaz going for it. Then Jota's in the middle. Is there not a world to say that Salah stays, but we still get Bakayoko because there's no real... Someone mentions Ben Doak, but there's no real competition on the right wing, and it'd just be another player for depth who he might not start every game, but he's young and he will get the occasional rotation as Salah gets older.
Yeah. The thing is with Salah is, I know this is kind of his... one of the very few times Salah's been injured or picked up a knock, but Salah just has not shown the ability to miss games at all. And he is just at the peak of his fit. He's one of those players, kind of like Ronaldo. You can just stay so fit for through your late 30s and, just for the most of your career. Until I see Salah really have a drop off, and maybe we'll see with this injury, but he's already back. He hasn't really missed that many games. He was already away at, AFCON. So, it wasn't too much of a disappointment to not see him involved, but I'm just, until you really see Salah break down, I don't see, bringing in buying a backup of Bakayoko's caliber. Cause I think, for Bakayoko, he's a player that you buy, and I think you'd feature more than, than having Salah there. And Salah, even, projecting that we would be in the Champions League next year. I mean, it's not Europa League where we would start a backup. Salah's going to start in the Champions League. So for Bakayoko to see those minutes, I just think it's tough for me. I just think, I know there really isn't any worry with running Salah to the ground. Like we run him to the ground every year, and he doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Now, maybe that is something you consider as he gets up there in age. You try to protect him, but again, the player himself, I just don't see, until I see it, purchasing a big, spending that much money on a backup, on a reserve, just doesn't make too much sense right now.
Yeah. And Carter, I mean, I'll get your thoughts on Bakayoko as well. We know where the priorities lie on the pitch at the moment, where we need to strengthen. Is this just the sort of, A, do you like Bakayoko as a player? Do you know anything of him? And B, is this really a position that we need to be prioritizing if there's no reports that Salah's leaving, but there's this sort of smack of, if we're looking in that area, to Race's point, that maybe Salah is on the way out in the summer? Is that a possibility?
I think the thing you could argue maybe it's a bit more of a negative thing now, but I think a big positive of Bakayoko is that Brentford was so interested in him. And Brentford are kind of a bit like Brighton in a way of, if you look at Watkins and Buemu, Tony, obviously Ben Rama didn't kick on, but they've gone and signed, and they were interested. They tried to get Mudryk, they tried to get Brennan Johnson, they tried to sign Noosa in the previous window. They do seem to have quite a good eye for wingers. You can have your opinion on Mudryk, but I think maybe if he'd have gone to Brentford, he would have suited that a lot more.
Yeah.
And someone like Bakayoko, I think they pushed, and they had agreed a fee, they'd agreed everything, and he said no because he was going to play Champions League football. And I do like Bakayoko. I think he's good, but I think the issue is almost similar to Anthony, where the goals just aren't there. For a team that hasn't lost a game and has scored all these goals, he doesn't have that many goals. And I almost think Gakpo, I look at the Eredivisie, even the Ajax team that's done well, how many players, Frankie de Jong's probably the only one who, he hasn't even been that much of a success, but is a real top player. De Ligt struggled everywhere. I think Gakpo is a winger who, I hate to say this, he can go past people, but he's not he doesn't beat players. He's a winger that can't go past the player. I think he is a striker. And I think, are we going to sign Bakayoko and have the same thing we now have with Diaz, where we struggle to go past the fullback? So I almost think I'd rather go for someone, even people maybe on Twitter or something might say, I'd rather go and sign Buemu, or go and sign, I know he's very injured, but Pedro Neto, players who have proven that they can do it, are a bit more developed. Because we've got a lot of, although Jota and Diaz and Salah are older, a lot of our team is quite young. We don't have to go and sign another 21-year-old, 22-year-old player. We could sign someone who's peaking, we signed all Salah and Mane at 24, 25, 26. I would probably prefer to go in and sign someone like that, who's Salah was proven in Serie A as arguably the best player. Mane was a top player at Southampton. I'd rather go for something like that. Although he looks good, I'd maybe rather see him move something first. And then maybe in 2-3 years' time, we go, yeah, he's a top player. We'll make a move, even if it's way more money.
Well, and I'll keep it with you, Carter, because I think this is I think you're going along the right sort of lines. And Jen said we can chat about this all we want, but we don't know what the plan is because the new manager's not in place or the sporting director. Now, while I think that is true, and I'm going to pass it to both of you guys now. I'll go to you, Carson, and I'll go to you, Race. I understand that we don't know who's coming in. We don't know the situation, but the club are looking at Max Steedman to come in and become the new sporting director. And Klopp's leaving the team in a very good position where a lot of the players are young, and whatever manager comes in is going to be in a benefit because we have such a plethora of young options. Surely getting a 20-year-old, £35 million winger for whoever the next person coming in is, that's a good thing. Like it's almost the sort of, he's got so much room to develop. His value is going to increase over the years. Get him in now, and regardless of who the manager is coming in or the sporting director, there's this young prospect there for whoever the manager is. I mean, is there a case for that, Carter?
I think there's a case for getting a deal in place, like because obviously I think it's like Will Spearman or something is in charge of like the analytics at the moment, and obviously the club will be in discussions with Salah, but they'll be telling him we're looking at keep an eye on this type of player, keep an eye on this type of player. So just when the new manager comes in, you've got everything to show them, the new sporting director, because obviously they'll probably come in earlier. But I think it could almost be a similar case where we've negotiated a deal with them, but then the new manager comes in. Because I think when Ferguson left, I think Moyes had the option to sign like Cruz or Thiago and then said no. Yeah. So it's almost like you might have things set up that look good and you might think this is a good deal. And then the manager comes in and says, oh, that's not my type of player. So I think we'll be looking at all sort of the people, because we can't, like before Elise got injured, it would be stupid of us not to speak to him and have conversations, because if we wait 3 months, he could go, well, I've already signed for Chelsea. Like, I think that was the issue with Caicedo, was he'd already promised to go to Chelsea. Whereas if we were maybe more proactive and started negotiating sooner, we'd have been able to sign him. So I think it makes sense. I think we're going to put out a lot of feelers, speak to players, speak to clubs, and then whoever comes in, the sporting director or the manager, they'll have an idea. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the manager we get a sporting director and the manager then sort of is making decisions whilst he's at his current club. Like, I think Pep kind of said no to Sterling, Gundogan, and maybe like De Bruyne, and they all ended up at Man City in the next 2 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened.
And Race, I mean, same sort of question to you, and something else to consider as well is I think Liverpool's owners are very analytical in how they approach a manager or who they want to sign. They saw it at Klopp, they crunched the numbers, and they got the statistics up, what would be best. I mean, is there a chance that with that sort of way of viewing players in mind, they've looked at Bakayoko and thought, we're going to get X, Y, and Z from him. This is what he offers statistically. This is what he offers on a numerical level. This would suit Alonso, who they're going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at him in that same sort of way, and they might think, oh, that could work. And we saw Chelsea. Frank Lampard has said himself that when he was at Chelsea manager, and I know they're very different clubs, but there were players that he got that he wanted, and there were players he got that the owners wanted. And I mean, could this sort of factor into it if Bakayoko is a genuine deal that we're looking at?
Yeah, the thing that why Klopp is announcing his decision now is because he wants to give the club time and give them that opportunity to do the right search and give them the time and what they need to get the club right. So they certainly have the time to figure it out. So I am confident in that regards that they will get this decision done in the right way. But if you bring in any manager to our team, you got obviously. It starts with Salah and like, hey, here you go. Here's Mo Salah, the best winger on the planet. Like, how can you not get this guy into your team? It's kind of that type of thing. And to go back to Xabi Alonso, I think when he, I think it was not this season, but the last season, he had Diaby, who's now, of course, at Villa, and he was playing well under him, and he was kind of that winger, left-footed, cut inside type winger. So he's familiar with that type of player, and so I think that's where the Bakayoko fit would be nice. Of course, Salah would, be my preference, but Bakayoko, I think that would be a suitable player to bring into a system. You certainly have to get it right. You don't want, to bring in, I think that's the problem. You'll have owners, they want their players, and the manager wants their players. You really have to be on the same page, same wavelength for that. You know, I think that's what we've done a good job of doing is making sure we're all kind of connected. And so whichever manager does come in, I mean, you just have to look at, you know, the club, you know, the players that we have. I mean, we have the most important part set, which is the team, the group, the squad that we have. You know, we're obviously top of the Premier League. We're battling on all four fronts. Like, we are in a really good position. So that part is important. You know, that's what we have set. So whoever comes in as the sporting director, the manager, who else, you know, is going to have a really good foundation. That's obviously what Klopp wanted and what he has set for us. And of course, as Carter mentioned, a lot of young players around the squad too. So there's a lot of potential to build. You know, and I kind of agree with what he said about, you know, buying a winger that's more peaking and more in their prime. You know, I think that makes sense. And going back to the Salah and Mane purchases was great. I didn't, you know, didn't think of that, but yeah, they were both bought a more advanced age, not advanced, but you know, more developed professionals. And so us going for kind of a winger who's still breaking into his career, you know, first couple years, maybe that hasn't made sense in the past. So it would make sense, especially if you're placing a player like Salah, to bring in a proven player, proven goal scorer, you know, to fill that void, or to attempt to fill that void. That really makes a lot of sense. So, but I would still, you know, fancy Bakayoko to come in if we would be interested.
Yeah, I mean, like Jen said, we have to get the manager and sporting director right, and I agree. I just think Bakayoko is, if it is 35 million for a 20-year-old winger who he's got 4 goals and 8 assists in the league, 1 goal and 4 assists in the Champions League. That's a good. Like, if you can do it in the Dutch league, it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. But if you can do it in the Champions League and actually look like a good player, you're doing it with the big boys, and that's something that stands out. So, I mean, I'd be happy with Bakayoko. I mean, that'd be a good signing, to be honest. Just need to see on the price. And like you said, the manager, who we get him, it moves us on actually to the next topic. And just before we do, everyone please make sure to hit like and subscribe and share the stream as well. Get as many people watching this as you possibly can. Tweet, like, share the lot. Because we're going to move on. It's the thing that has dominated the news. Let's be honest, it's going to dominate until the end of the season, and that is Liverpool manager. I think, I don't know if I'm in the majority here or if anyone disagrees, but I think Alonso seems to be the number one. That's who majority of people want. But we need to start looking at who would be number 2. And according to a lot of different reports, if the club don't get Xabi Alonso, if for some reason they can't make it happen, Ruben Amorim is the number 2 choice. Now, he is the Sporting Lisbon manager. It's a very interesting one. So if you look him up, his style of management, he's known for his communication skills and tactical knowledge and flexibility, displaying a very positive mindset and easygoing personality and disclosure. Amorim reaffirmed that several times, that he does not talk about referees. You can't do that in England, let's be honest. Race, go to you first, and I'll go to you, Carter. I mean, Amorim, how we feeling about that as an option?
It's kind of early in the search, so I'll have to dig in a little more. Just obviously looking at his profile, just kind of younger manager. You know, I certainly, in our manager search, I don't want to bring in some lame duck who's been like sacked somewhere else or has failed, or, you know, I want someone who's on the rise, and he certainly seems to fit that. Just thinking about, you know, the Portuguese league, you know, of course you have Sporting, you have Porto, you have Benfica, kind of those big 3. I noted he won the league with Sporting a few years back, which was their first league title in quite some time. So, you know, good to see that he's got that under his belt. You know, of course, it's naive to think that Alonso's our one and only target. I mean, you have to come up with plan B, plan C. You just have to. You can't be naive in your search. So, just identifying other targets. You know, over these next couple months, I'm gonna definitely, you know, I'm going to be tuned into like Leverkusen games more. Like, I want to see how they play in that style of play, and then maybe Sporting as well, you know, just to see what these managers are like, and kind of their mannerisms. Like you mentioned, he doesn't talk about the referees well. I kind of like, you know, I think we all kind of appreciate Jurgen sometimes going after him, and it's entertaining and whatnot. And of course, he backs up with his results on the field, so it doesn't feel like he's moaning all the time. But you know, it's you know, I don't know too much about him. I think, like you said, we're all kind of, you know, narrowed in on Alonso. But Ruben here, something to keep an eye on. You think of Sporting as one of those clubs that is sometimes a tough out in the European competitions. Maybe they make it to a knockout round and they get bounced by a bigger club. So you think of a manager too who's wanting to step up and have some more ambition. I think Liverpool would obviously be a great opportunity for that. You have the big club, the big stature. You can advance further in the Champions League, more resources at your disposal. So we're certainly an intriguing option for any manager looking to make their mark on the biggest stage.
Yeah. Well, he's interesting that there's comments saying, he's unproven. And then he does put in the higher leagues, which I think is fair enough. Definitely is. We saw that with Xabi, really. The only big role that he'd had is the Ukrainian league with Shakhtar Donetsk before he went to Brighton. And he's proven himself in the Premier League. But, Carter, just get your thoughts on Ruben Amorim before I go into some of not the history about him, but just a few of the statistics and stuff, the analytical sort of breakdown of it. What's your thoughts on him, and would you be happy with him as the number 2 behind Jurgen Klopp, or have you got anyone in mind? Besides Alonso, even, sorry.
Yeah, I think Amorim is quite an interesting one, because I think if I looked at like De Zerbi and Nagelsmann, I think he probably, in terms of like his football, I've only seen a few games, and mainly the Man City ones where they didn't do very well. But I feel he's the one that blows me away the least. But I also think the issue with someone like De Zerbi is he just seems a bit too hot-headed. I think, although we've got certain players, I think he's even when he was in Serie A, sometimes his teams they concede a few goals, like he did it with Luton, like Brighton did against Everton last year. I think they are susceptible to conceding a few too many. I think Nagelsmann for Liverpool is almost too nerdy. Like, just everything about him just isn't like a Liverpool manager. Like, he does like the long board into training, and I think he had like a massive falling out because he was his partner or something worked at Build or something, and he was leaking information, which I don't think is going to go down well if that's a sort of a known thing. But I think Amorim's he seems a bit like Alonso in the way of he's least wedded to like a specific style. I think he'd almost suit us, because even if Alonso's like, I don't want to come straight away, I feel like Amorim is a type of coach where De Zerbi or Nagelsmann could take us to 95 points maybe at their best, but we could be down in the 70s. But I think Amorim, he's sort of the guy where your ceiling might not be massive, but your floor is going to be very high. So I almost think if you can't get Alonso, he's quite a sensible person to put into the role. And I also think with the amount of sort of young Portuguese players that are coming through, like, I don't know if he was at Sporting at the same time as Leao, but you look at sort of Inacio and you look at Diamande who's coming through, I think that could be quite good to sort of bring those players, because so many top players do come through like Lisbon's team. So I don't think it would be like a bad appointment at all.
I mean, yeah, he does seem to be quite not a young and up-and-coming manager, but he does sort of seem to be one who's popped up out of nowhere. And to be fair, I say he's not young and up-and-coming. He's 39. Like, that's young for management, because there's still players who are going in that age. And it's the same sort of thing as Nagelsmann, who was in I think he was late 20s, early 30s when he first started.
Yeah.
Now he's, that's still young. During his time at Sporting, if you bear with me one moment, so he's won 4 trophies in 2 seasons. If you look at his managerial statistics, he had a 72% win ratio with Braga B, a 76% win ratio with Braga, and he's got a 69.47 win ratio with Sporting. He's won the league title, their first league title in 19 years. According to a lot of the stuff, he plays very attack-minded football. He plays 4-2-4. It's out there, but like Jen says, you can't replace Klopp. They're all going to have different styles, and maybe this is one that we need to adopt to. I mean, with a young manager like that, and Race, I'll go to you with it. From what we understand, there's no sort of personality clash. He seems like a very tactically astute manager, but is there that sort of worry of he spent his whole career in the Portuguese league? Would he be able to sort of hack the step up to the Premier League, so to speak? Is that something that we would have to sort of look at, or FSG? Of course they're going to, but they'll have done their due diligence on it and worked out if he'd be the man or not.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my reservation with it. I think the Premier League is just, I think, another step up from other leagues, especially the Portuguese league. And you're able. I think again with in Portugal, you have those top three teams, maybe another one here or there, but pretty much they're kind of set each year, and so you're kind of allowed more freedom and flexibility to do things or change things. Because you always know that you're gonna outclass your opponents. It's just not, there's not as much parity in the league as maybe there is in the Premier League, but um, I think and that's really the concern with any type of manager, maybe less with someone like Alonso, but with Amorim, like it's something to consider. It's you have to make sure that there's a plan in place for when he does come in, what he wants to do, what kind of football he wants to play. Certainly we want to be attacking. We don't want to shift back into defensive because that's just not our identity. I think that's everything Klopp worked to bring this team to do is be attack minded on the front foot, and to hire a manager who has any sort of hint to drop back and kind of sit deep. We don't want that. I don't think in order to win trophies, especially in this era of the Premier League and who else is around the league. Of course, you have Man City, and then Arsenal are starting to develop into that as well. You don't want to. Obviously defense is important, but you want to make sure your players going forward are have that mindset of attacking and not sitting back. Like you said, like we mentioned earlier, like Burnley are trying to change that, even kind of be more attacking. Everyone's trying to do it because sitting back, sitting deep, that's the old way of football. We're not going to see any more, like the Jose Mourinho's of the world. Like that's just not the way to do things anymore, especially in the Premier League. So you just have to make sure that whatever style he brings to us, if he would come in, is a good one, because if he has a style, but we have the players to, we obviously have a good enough team to challenge for Premier League. So you just have to make sure that everything's fluid there and clear on what the direction of his team is. And you have to make sure that he's ready for Premier League, because it's it's a battle week in, week out, no matter who you play. Hopefully, spending a career in the Portuguese league, there's some some adaptability to come to the Premier League.
Definitely. And I'll keep it with you for a moment, Race, and then Carter, I'm going to go to you with the same sort of thing. So just really quick, you mentioned the attacking style. His side currently have scored the most goals in the league. They're on 53 goals in 19 games. That's currently 9 higher than anyone else in the league, including Benfica and Braga. They've just beat a team 8-0 in their league, who, yes, the 14th in the Portuguese league, but that's still a good scoreline. Shows that he's playing very attack-minded football. And there's a quote from Paulo Manises, who's the head of recruitment for Braga. His playing style is very pragmatic. He's a studious coach with the capacity for work and a lot of intuition. He is contagious with his will to win and with the conviction that only with hard work from everyone that is possible. I mean, that's promising. Does that not remind you to a degree of what Jurgen Klopp's like as a manager?
Yeah, and another aspect with hiring a manager too is like they're the leader of the team. They have to motivate these guys to play. The mindset is just important as the tactics on the field, because any manager out there can have the tactics right, but the mindset is, I think, what separates Klopp from everyone else is just kind of being able to get the most out of everyone. So in any sort of interview process or whatever, you just have to make sure that guy is wired right and it has the will to win, and all the intangibles of running the club, because this is a big deal. Taking over Liverpool in a period where we're at our best in how many years. So you have to make sure that part is there just as much as the tactics are there.
Yeah. Carter, same sort of thing to you. I mean, I completely agree with you, Race. I think you're absolutely right. How important is it that we're not only looking at the tactical side of it, someone who's going to be able to get the team playing good football, but is also able to get the team motivated and has that personality that makes the players want to play for him? Because we've seen managers in the past who, they play great football, like Mourinho, or at one point Mourinho, but let's face it, he's an arsehole, so no one wants to play for it. I mean, how important is it having that person?
I think it is. I think it's very important. And I think, although he's young, I think his sort of experience of going there and still dealing with like some quite good players, I think it will be important. And he has been linked to like a number of jobs before throughout, like constantly with Chelsea. Like I think even when they got Potter, he was linked. And I think one positive, at least for us, is that there's a Liverpool legend at the club at Lisbon who can give us a good sort of feedback in Sebastian Cortez. He can sort of tell us how things are, like they will, because they'll check up, they'll go through different avenues and speak to people and see how things are at the club. But I like the fact that you used the word pragmatic, because I think Klopp said before he's pragmatic. People are just pragmatic in different ways, and I think Klopp wants, although we are all over, we're very fast paced, blah 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 blah. Klopp wants the ball. Like all the big managers, pragmatic means having the ball. It means just getting the ball back and controlling games. And I think I know people want to be this front foot, super aggressive team, because I think all top teams press. Arsenal might not be as quick, sort of going up the pitch. They might be a bit more slow and controlled. But the games we played against them, they've pressed us like crazy. They reminded me of us previously, especially the game at Anfield where they came out and pressed for 15 minutes. So I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing to slightly tweak and change things, because also if you stay the same way, people are gonna catch you up. Look at Barcelona; they had the best player in the world for years and years and years, and as soon as MSN broke up, they just didn't get the Champions League again. No. So I don't necessarily think it's terrible to move away, because we're still gonna have the press, we're still gonna have the players, but who knows? We could sit here in 4 years' time and think, wow, this really improved Trent. This allowed Salah to keep playing at the top level for 4 more years. And I think another positive is how well he's done with Victor Gyökeres, who was, I don't know if any of you followed him at Coventry last year where they lost the playoffs to Luton. He was sort of seen as like the star player, one of the best players in the Championship, and he's gone and absolutely smashed it. And people might say he's a bit more technical than Núñez, but I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of their strikers who can run in the channel, who can carry the ball, who get goals and assists. So I think if he can get the best out of Gyökeres, I definitely think he could suit having a striker like Núñez, which would really suit us, as he's sort of our big attacker moving forwards.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned like Núñez there. That's a key one. Is he? And I completely agree. Good info. Good info. I think I completely agree. And you mentioned Núñez, having a manager who's going to inspire confidence and a will to win. That's only going to benefit someone like Darwin Núñez. Let's be honest. And you mentioned MSN, and it's just something there that I've just seen. His wife is the sister-in-law of Antero Henrique, who's the former sporting director of PSG and was responsible for the signing of Neymar back in 2017. So he's got links across football. Clearly, he's his name's out there. So I'm excited for what the future holds. I think Alonso is a lot of people's first choice. He's mine personally. I don't know if it's everyone else's, but say we don't get Alonso and Ruben Amorim is the number 2 that's linked. Who is he? And Race, I'll go to you first, then I'll go to you, Carter. Is he your number 2 choice? And Alonso doesn't have to be first. I might be off base with that. But is Amorim in your top 3 choices for who should come in next after Klopp? Or have you got a different person in mind?
Well, you're right. Alonso's definitely my number 1. That's no question there. I honestly haven't done. I haven't done too much looking into manager yet, so I'm open to any suggestions. So Amorim, for me, I guess would be my number 2 at the moment. I'm just trying to think of any other manager. I mean, it's such a like I mentioned before. I don't want to bring in some manager who's had some past failures or is kind of just picked picked over, or you just kind of just because he's there you get him. I want someone who's kind of up and coming and someone who's looking for the next step in their career. Looking for a challenge, and a manager who has ambition, not just like, all these other men, like when Spurs hired Ainge, I thought that was a really good move because that's the type of manager I'd want to bring in, someone who's won at lower levels and wants to prove himself at the next level. And so a manager move like that, whoever is out there, whoever's kind of maybe having a good season out there, like I said, I haven't looked too much into it, but I guess Alonso and Amorim would be my 1 and 2 for now.
Yeah, I mean, Carter, same. I know we agreed on Alonso. We were there the day Klopp made the announcement. So, but is Amorim number 2 for you, or top 3, or have you got someone else in mind?
He's probably top 3, and I know not everyone is gonna like this, but I do think honestly, I know they lost the other night, but I honestly think Thomas Frank is such a good fit. I think the only issue is it's from Brentford, and I personally think they've had now, obviously, a lot of people probably listening are all Liverpool fans.
Yeah.
Brentford have had, I've got quite a lot of mates who are Brentford fans. They've had 7 or 8 main players out for most of the season. They have like the 4th best XG against on expected. So XG minus XG conceded, they're like 7th or 8th. And that's with almost half the team out, which is probably better than what the stage we were at last season.
Yeah.
And we had a similar amount of players out. I think in terms of things like marginal gains, like where Klopp brings in throwing coaches and stuff, I think that's very up Thomas Frank's sort of street, with all the set pieces, like with Tony blocking the Man City centre back and them scoring straight from the goal kick. I think those sort of things, I think he coaches a really good defence. I think he's all about gaining little yards here and there. I think the way he conducts himself, I think is really good. I really like him. I think he's a bit fiery like Klopp, but he can be quite likeable. I think the only issue is if we're 10 games in and it's not gone well, he's not going to last, because you're going to have top players in there thinking, who is this? However, if it starts off well, that's the only risk. And I feel like he's most suited to come to us, but are we willing to? I feel that would be like if Michael Edwards was signing the next manager, I think he'd sign Thomas Frank. But obviously that doesn't always work. Sometimes you need to look at other things and how he would be in the dressing room, which is something you actually can't like quantify. But he'd be sort of my pick.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Thomas Frank. I do agree that he can be on the receiving end of a few beatings, but at the same time, he plays very good football and he gets results against the big teams. He's done it against Arsenal. He's done it against us. He's done it against City. And like you mentioned there, he has had a lot of key players out, and they've not had Ivan Toney for months, and they've still managed to make a thing work. Damon Carter says, I think you're all too sentimental with it's got to be Alonso because he used to play for us. He knows the club. It's all BS. Amorim has to be first choice. He's got more experience than Xabi. I agree. He's got more experience. I think, and I do sort of to an extent agree that because Alonso is a former player, he does have that sort of personable sway, but it's for me personally, I think he's showing progressive football. He's playing good football. And I think he's he'd have the long-term benefit that maybe Amorim wouldn't, because he was the former player. He'd get more patience. Lampard at Chelsea, it's the only comparison I'm really making because the only one that springs to mind. But I feel like he got slightly longer than a lot of other managers did because of who he was, and it didn't work out. Obviously, it was poor, but I don't know. I think Alonso plays good football. Amorim, from what I'm reading and what I've seen, same thing. Thomas Frank, I completely agree. I think he's a very good manager, but I think he could do with maybe sort of like what Eddie Howe's done, where it was Bournemouth, then Newcastle, and then if a big job comes up, see how he does there. But I don't know. I mean, I like Thomas Frank. I agree with what you're saying there, man. I'm going to move on. Just before we do, everyone, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. Oh, and also, forgot to say, thank you so much for helping us reach 10K. We finally did it. I can stop stressing now because, really, really do appreciate it. It's massive. Let's just keep it going and try and get more. And there's going to be a really exciting video coming out in the next few days, another expert analysis, so tune in for that. And there's one comment I've saved. So it's Jamie is saying, Ian Doyle, there's a bit of confusion over Dominic Szoboslai injury absence. The Hungarian outlet that hinted at up to a month out last night has since backtracked a bit and said timeout has yet to be determined. He is injured again. It's a player who, young, promising, signed from RB Leipzig, who just seems to be getting injured every other week. And it's heartbreaking because we saw how much we missed Dominic Szoboslai against Arsenal. I mean, Race, how big of a blow is this at a time where after that Arsenal defeat, we need to bounce back ASAP, and not having him in the team? I mean, how detrimental is that?
Yeah, it sucks. No doubt about it. It's frustrating too because it was a hamstring injury that he had, and you think he re-aggravated it, and you think we probably rushed him back too quick, and I think that's where you're just kicking yourself in the foot, like from a player side, from a man, everyone's just like, oh man, because it's avoidable, right? Because you don't have to rush him back necessarily, but obviously we had him play, and now he's gonna be out longer, and those hamstring injuries can really linger. It's really tough to get back up to it, and as a player too, just having the confidence, to in that hamstring that you're not going to pull it again. So now we're really going to be cautious. I think that's kind of where we're getting this longer timeline, is because we really want to be cautious for, because when he does come back, we're going to be in the stretch run. We're gonna need him, in every single game. So it's it's really frustrating, especially considering you have the League Cup coming up. You probably won't be in the mix for that. And then of course in the league, we're gonna have big games and whatnot. I will say it's good that Endo's gonna be coming back, and so it's interesting that we're gonna have Endo coming back. I think McAllister's been phenomenal since coming back from his little injury, and Curtis Jones is kicking on this season. And I'm sure we'll talk more about team selection in the coming days and whatnot. But I think it'd be interesting to see Endo in that number 6, and then McAllister further up the pitch. I think we really haven't seen that out of him this season. And now with Szoboszlai's injury, I think you could see more of an opportunity for that to happen. I think in these past couple of games for McAllister, he's really good going forward. We kind of forget how good he is, and that's kind of what we purchased him for, not to play this number 6, but he's obviously played well in that role. But going forward is what he can do that too, and I'm excited to see if we'll experiment with that a little more. Of course, you have Thiago coming back, so we aren't short on options in the midfield. We'll certainly be able to cover his absence, and that's why you have a squad depth. That's why you have other players. That's why we buy all the midfielders that we do. That being said, Szoboszlai, I think, has kind of been our most exciting midfielder this season, because we see what he provides going forward. We see the rocket shots that he's had this year. I think he's certainly a goal presence, and he's quick too. He's damn quick, on the field. So we're definitely gonna miss him, and I think him. You could a toss up between him and McAllister for our best midfielder of the season, and so to lose arguably our best midfielder obviously isn't good for the stretch run, and you just hope that there's no other injuries that arise, because then your depth is really tested. But yeah, it's we'll have to make do. I'm still confident we'll get through this tough period, and I saw the thing too, like the timeline on the injury isn't. I saw a couple things that it wasn't as long as it was reported, and some said it is long, and again with a hamstring, I just think you're more cautious on it because it's a muscle injury. It's a tender thing. You really have to be careful about it and bringing him back. You have to make sure that he's fully back for it.
Yeah, I mean, hamstrings are tricky. Like we've seen Reece James, how I don't know what. Right, I don't know why Chelsea keeps popping to my mind. It just does tonight, and I don't know why. But yeah, so Reece James, hamstrings, it just they're made of Weetabix at this point, and you see how much of an effect it has. Like Carter, we saw how good Szoboszlai is, or how good he was against Chelsea. He ran that game at points. Again, same question that I gave to Race. How big of an impact will this have, and how do we accommodate for Szoboszlai being out? Is it Thiago gets more game time? Elliott? Does McAllister move further forward? What's the plan?
I think if everyone was fit, I don't think at the moment it would be a super huge issue, because I think his intensity and his speed and his size are what we're going to miss. Because I actually think there's been a few games, especially like the Man United game, where you actually feel he could have done a lot better offensively. Like I feel like I'm quite excited with him, because I almost feel like he's definitely got a level or two to go up in the attack. And I think the only issue now is there's only probably 2 midfielders who play with the same intensity as him in sort of the 8 who have got the athleticism to do so, and that's Jones and Elliott. And Elliott isn't particularly big. And then I think the other player that can kind of do that and cover the amount of ground as quick as those 3 is Bajcetic, and he's not fit. So I think now you are kind of, because not every game needs players like him running 100 miles per hour for 90 minutes. Sometimes you could say we're going to have McAllister there and be a bit more controlled, and we're going to have Endo and Jones, and we might not create as much or make as many forward runs, but we're going to keep the ball a lot more. We're going to be a lot more stable. But I think we'll be all right. But I just think we're going to not have the opportunity to play as press as well, or as press teams as high. So we're going to have to be very smart on the ball, because when we turn it over, that might be more of an issue. But I do think when Endo comes in, it should help that. And also I think McAllister, I've been very impressed with sort of his nastiness. I think he's got a bit of like a Robertson to him, where he'll sort of go in and do players, and players will jump and he'll stand there. And I think he can sort of take. We've seen him. I don't know if any of you guys. I think it was the cup. No, maybe it was the cup game against United, or it was the game in the league where he absolutely, I think, bullied Casemiro for 90 minutes and then scored a penalty. I think it was the league game. So he's definitely got the ability to go and play against good number sixes and put his footprint on the game, imprint on the game. I don't know, but I think for me more, I'm quite excited for Thiago maybe to come back in, but be used very sparingly, because as we've now seen with Szoboszlai, don't overplay players who might be prone to injury. Someone like him, he's always going to be prone to injury because he's so big, he runs so much, he runs so quickly. So we've just got to manage him. Like, I think he's played significantly more minutes already now than he did last season. So I just think it's just been we haven't had the opportunity to manage it properly, but we either need to put more faith in some of the other players, or you need to move people on to and have players that you're confident in starting, which is my only thing.
I mean, there's a good comment saying move Trent to the 8 and play Bradley at right back. We don't know how long Conor Bradley is going to be out for, obviously because of the death of his father. Like we don't know what the plan is there. So I do think it's a good idea if he's back, but he's not at the moment. We just don't have a time frame on it, and nor do we expect one, to be honest. Worst case scenario, or from what we're hearing, is he could miss up to 8 games. Now, those 8 games include, we've got Burnley at home, Brentford away, Luton at home, Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final, Forest away, Man City at home, Everton away, Brighton at home. There's some tough fixtures that he's not going to be involved in. And race, just really quick, actually, I've just been told that he's back Conor Bradley is back at training. Brilliant. So if that's an option, that's fine. We'll stick it with that then. Race, I mean, is there that world where we could see Trent be moved to the number 8 role and Conor Bradley start as right back?
I don't know about number 8. Maybe that's a little too far up. So number 6, I think, would be good. I think obviously, his distribution from that role, I think, would be something to marvel at. I think we've seen that, of course. I think he would be that's kind of the role, and that obviously helps. With the injury to Szoboszlai, just adding more midfield depth. If Conor Bradley's able to, lock down the right back role and keep performing in that, that just gives you more options in the midfield. And of course, Endo coming back and Thiago coming back, it's all options out there. And like I said, I really want to see McAllister kind of move up the field a little bit and kind of see what he can do, because I think that's really exciting. And we've seen from a deeper position with his distribution what he can do. I think just moving him up the field, and as we talked about with Szoboszlai, he providing a little more going forward. I think Szoboszlai sometimes is kind of looking for the shot himself and not necessarily distributing as well. I think McAllister would kind of be the opposite of that. I think he's probably looking to pass first and then shoot himself. Obviously, he can do both. But I think moving Trent up into midfield, I think I kind of forgot about the Conor Bradley thing. But if he's back, that's a good option to have. And then, because I think, we talk a lot about Trent's future and what his position is. I think going into midfield is kind of his destiny right now. And, I think it'd be really intriguing to get him going into that position right now with the opportunity. Of course, Endo is another, option in the 6. I think who's coming on and then had to depart for the Asian Cup, but he's back. And, we have options, all these sort of options. I think we'll get through it. You mentioned the fixtures list. It's not the worst run of games. We are facing some lower sides, but of course the League Cup final. You have a game, against City in early March. I think that would, that's probably a little optimistic for a Szoboszlai return. That's kind of on probably the best case scenario of him returning, but I wouldn't, pencil him in for that. But it's definitely manageable. I just think that, that Brentford game, it's one of those early kickoffs on Saturday. That's those dreaded kickoffs. But then it's certainly manageable. So I'm not too concerned about our prospects. I'm just disappointed not to see Szoboszlai, because he's just such an exciting player to watch, and and to continue to see him develop and see him, improve in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Szoboszlai is class, and there was a point in the summer where we were saying sign of the summer because he was just so good after the first few games. And the only thing that's concerning, and Carl, I'll get your thoughts on this. Like Szoboszlai, this is only his second injury since being at the club. He has only been here a few months, of course, or 6 months roundabout. So it's not a massive amount of time. Both injuries have been hamstrings. He's come back, he played one game, and then he's injured again with the same thing. Is this something? And Race mentioned it earlier and did talk about it a bit, but is this something that we need to be concerned about going forward and maybe think, could we, and it's very jump the gun, I know, but could we be looking at another sort of Thiago thing where when he plays, he's brilliant, but if he continues to get injured with the same sort of thing,
I think it's certain players I think him, Nunes, Haaland, like Mickey van der Ven, they're always going to be at risk because they're so big, they're so quick. Those type of guys always. Obviously, I can't go back and tell you other guys. I can't maybe tell you. I know Ledley King was injured a lot, but that might have been as well because he was big and quick. But
Daniel Sturridge, he was
yeah.
one.
I think the thing is, we just now, because there's going to be so many more games next year, we need to have a proper team, and we need to be. I've kind of been thinking this in my head. I really like Harvey Elliott, and I think at the same stage where Bernardo Silva was, he hadn't played that many games. And you could argue they could be on a similar trajectory in terms of learning to use their body. But I think we need to have a team where you're confident, apart from maybe one or two guys, because Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson, this Trent, or maybe not even Trent now because of Bradley, but some guys, the gap between certain players is always going to be so big. But you need to be confident to say we don't need to play Szoboszlai every game. We can't be like when we were with Thiago, because now I really like Thiago. I think he was the most important player in us pushing for the treble, and not the treble, the quadruple. I think he was the most important player, and I think we just played him every single game. And it's like it's like buying a car. And the car can only do 100 miles per hour, and you're trying to do 120, and you're complaining about it. Like what he was when you signed him. Some of these players like Nunes. We've seen he's had. I think last season there was a bit we didn't play him because he felt his hamstring. And Nunes, we've had a few of those where we've just, okay, no, we're not going to play you. We're going to rest you. And I think we've got to be confident. We've got to get players in. And I think once Bajcetic comes back, I don't think that will be such a big issue. But we've got to have players that can do similar things to Szoboszlai and keep that intensity and maintain the press, because Elliott's not got the physical body to tackle players. Gravenberch is so unintense, and McAllister's kind of like Thiago, where they're both short and they're not very quick, and they've got little legs and they can't cover those distances. So I think it's more of a recruitment thing and a management thing rather than that will be what causes the issues, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment of it, to be honest. And you mentioned there a couple of different midfielders. For the last question, just before we shoot, I'm going to go to you, Race, then I'm going to go to you, Carter. What midfield three is starting that game against Burnley, and why that specific midfield three? Race, you give yours first.
Well, it's a tough question. I think because if Connor Bradley's back in training and if he's going to be back fully ready to go, I think he'll be in the right back spot. So I think I would move Trent into midfield. I think you put him at the 6 role, and then you have McAllister and Jones in the two more advanced midfielders. I think McAllister's just been in good form, so I wouldn't take him out of the team. Trent coming back. I mean, Trent, we forget he was subbed off against Arsenal just because he didn't really play that well. We needed to be more defensive. He just wasn't, I don't think, doing that well. It just didn't fit what we needed to do in that game. So he came off, so he'll be ready to go. And then Jones just has been, great this year. So, and it's a good game to experiment with, if you want to call it an experiment, with Trent in midfield and number 6, because it's Burnley. We're not going to be, at least you don't imagine they're going to be attacking us much. They probably are going to sit a little deeper. We're going to have the ball a lot. So give Trent that opportunity to kind of sit back and pick out passes, in and out, all around the field, just to, break them down. Because, it's going to be a tough, they're going to be a tough, out to at Enfield, just because they're going to want to defend and protect the net. So yeah, I think it's a good spot to experiment a little bit. I think it's a little quick for Endo to come right back into the team, just kind of making that travel back here, just kind of get him acclimated back into training. Although I don't imagine it'll take long. I'd imagine you could certainly play in this game, as a sub, and then be back in the starting lineup for our next game if need be. But I think it's a good spot to give Trent a run in that position. And then McAllister too, like I said, another passing option to find the right player, pick a pass here or there, break down the team. Because that's, we've struggled, in the past with breaking down these teams to sit in the low blocks. So just having more guys that are able to make passes. Then you have Curtis Jones, who's pressing high, making the runs and whatnot. I think that'll be my favorite: Jones, Trent, and then McAllister.
Okay, I think that's a fair one. Carter, do you agree, or have you got a different one in mind?
I don't think Gravenberch will be playing after Klopp sort of shouted at him. I don't think he was happy with the pressing, and I think that's just. I also think people need to remember he didn't have preseason, but I think looking at sort of the Bournemouth game, I think it will be McAllister, Elliott, and Jones, because I also think Klopp is still going to look at it and think it's still big for Bradley. Like, it's still, no matter what, I don't know. I think I saw something maybe saying he's been ill for a bit of time, but no matter what, it is such a big thing. And I just think he wants to play and you know what I mean, maybe 90 minutes he doesn't think about it. But I think Klopp's going to look at him. He's a young man. You don't need to put him in the firing line where he might not be emotionally ready to play. Like, he might put him on the bench and he might travel and he might come on if we're winning. But I just think it's not. I think sometimes you need to look after a player. And I just think just keep him there. He doesn't need to come on. If we need something, switch it up, bring him on. I could definitely see him coming on for a bit. But I just think you just don't need to start him. Just look after him. Just put him there. And hopefully maybe 10 minutes of Endo, 20 minutes of Thiago. I just think don't need to rush him back, especially Thiago. Endo, just maybe let him come back, have 10 minutes. And yeah, I just think that'll be, McAllister, Elliott, and Jones.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We've got so many options. Like you said, we can rotate. And that is going to be it, guys. Just really quick, JB just made sure to remind me of this. Thank you very much, by the way, because I remembered one, I forgot the other. Make sure you tune in tonight, 2 a.m. UK time for the American stream. I'm not quite sure what time that'll be in America. I'm sorry. I'm useless at stuff like this. But yeah, 2 a.m. in the UK time, stream later on. And make sure you tune in tomorrow night. There is going to be the 10K subscriber special. It's a bit of a quiz show. Quite a few of us actually doing it, so that'll be really exciting. And also make sure you tune in every single day, 7:30 p.m. UK time for the daily streams. A lot going on at the moment. Make sure you check in for the new videos coming out as well. More expert analysis is coming. And yeah, thank you very much to everyone who's been involved. Thank you, Race, and thank you, Carter, for everything. Really appreciate it as always. We are going to shoot off, guys. Make sure you have a good night, and we will see you for